All right. All right, so this next set of hair that I'm going to do is just, it's similar to some of the other ones that I've done already. It's a nice sort of curly, natural look. And again, before you do any of that hair, what I would recommend is that the skin and the details on the face and all that stuff would have been already finished. I'm just going to lightly do that over here again because I think it's a lot easier to get in and blend things like the forehead and all the other things that you find on the shadows over there before you actually have the hair done. So I'm just going to do a little quick version of this forehead without going too crazy over here. Got a little bit of a light spot. Got a little bit more dark gray down over here. And I'm going to focus more on the hair. This is just so I have something on the paper. Now for the hair, I have a rough sketch over here. I didn't have to draw every last little curl and things like that. And just like I've kind of done earlier, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start filling in. Now, on this side of the hair and where we start over here, it's not so dark. So I'm going to make sure that when I'm filling in with my little sort of random curly Q kind of mark making, I'm going to leave that kind of light. But as I get a little bit closer to the center over here, I'm going to add just a little bit more mark making to try to make it just a little bit darker. And I'm going to continue that throughout. Again, my first pass, the first time I do any of the hair, is usually a lighter pass. It is in part to add just a little bit of texture, and even more so what it is about getting rid of the white on the paper, because unless you have really quite a bit of gray hair or white hair, most of your hair is not going to have anything more than a light to medium gray. So I like to think of this as my base coat that sort of sets up the rest of the picture. And on this side of the picture, I want to see that I'm just a little bit darker. So I'm going to make it just a little bit darker. But again, I'm going over this a second time, so you don't have to go too crazy. And you can see the more random and the more sort of erratic I make my little curlicue shapes, the better and more realistic I think the hair will look. I'm going to lightly just kind of pat this in a little bit. I'm not going to do a heavy job of blending it. I'm not going to rub my finger over it aggressively to kind of smoothen everything out. I still want to be able to see some of the texture of what I put down, even though I'm kind of pressing it in the paper. From here, what I'll do is, just like I've done before, is I'll go over it a second time, almost the same way. This time is not going to be blended out. So, you know, some of these little like flyaway curls and things like that, those are little marks that I kind of want to carefully make and just leave them as is. And again, I'm not sitting there with a microscope trying to get every last strand perfect. But what I do want to kind of get is I want to get some areas, like right in where my pencil's working right now, tend to be a little bit darker. So I'm putting a little bit more mark making. Some of the marks up and away are a little bit lighter. So I'm going to kind of refrain from pressing down super hard. And I'm going to try to leave them a little light gray, so you can see some variation in there, like a little bit darker here, a little bit darker here, but a little bit lighter out to the edges. This side of the head has a little bit more shadow on it, and so does the hair. So right in here is going to be a little bit darker, and I'm going to get that really by just going over it more. Pressing down a little bit harder, but going on a little bit more. Some little tiny flyaways. I don't have to do them too perfectly. And for this particular hair, I'm going to leave a nice little natural looking edge over here. And I don't want to get in there with the eraser and shape up the edge of this thing and make it look like it's, you know, perfectly barbered or whatever. What I want to do is I kind of want to leave it a little bit, a little uneven and a little bit sort of like with some light marks to kind of indicate the baby hairs, the hairs being pulled in. And really this will do the trick. And I think that one, despite being a little bit of work, is really kind of a fun one to do because it doesn't require to have to be there too precise to really get the effect. But again, you can see some lighter side, darker side, same sort of marks, natural sort of edge out on the sides. A little more structured look. I'm going to do some braids now. These are always a little bit more challenging. certainly certainly require just a little bit more detail and effort, but nevertheless still following almost the same same principles. Now, when I go to draw the braids, instead of sitting there meticulously drawing every last little part of the braid, what I want to do is I want to get the basic structure of it. Okay, so in this case, I've got the braid itself. I see two of them in this particular part of the picture, and I've kind of treated them as one big stripe. And I've got the edge of the head here. What I also can see is kind of like where the parts are for this braid. So I'm going to kind of just give myself a little indication of where that part is supposed to be. And you'll see what I'm talking about once I start shading. So here's some hair. That's all pulled together. And then another little part over there. And we got baby hairs. And get rid of some of my grid marks. Again, in and around the picture. First things first, before I start the braid, I want to kind of go for the hair that's being pulled into the braid, and just where it is on the scalp. So there's going to be some light areas over here that's going to be like sort of the whiteness of the scalp, or the lightness of the scalp. And then we're going to have, in this case, this is almost like a little triangle over here of hair. Now, that hair is being pulled towards the braid. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with marks kind of going out from around the braid, and I'm going to make them all sort of pointing towards the braid itself. There's a pull of that hair, and that hair is going towards where the braid starts. I'll lightly just dab that in with my finger, really not much. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to look at, there's some spots here and there that are just a little bit darker. So all of this in the sort of base of the braid is all just dark little marks going towards the center here. We got another braid over here, and I'm going to do the same kind of thing. I've got hair that's sort of being pulled from the scalp towards that braid. Again, I have like an empty space here for that in-between part. I've got a little bit of hair from above. It's being pulled into that braid. And I'm going to kind of mark that up a little bit. Kind of lightly dab my finger over top of it. Come back again, and near the closeness of the braid, just make some of that a little bit darker with the same sort of marks that I'm making. Can't see the braid that this hair is connected to, but we also have a little bit of a start of a pull, so we have the light areas in between. Okay. Another sort of pull over here, and it's going towards a braid that's a little bit lower that I can't really see in the picture, but I'm going to make those little marks. Again, trying to go with what's going on in the actual picture. Hair is being pulled on this side towards the back of the head. I'm making my marks go towards the back of the head, and then we have some really light baby hairs, and I will just kind of hint at a few of them, just like when we did the eyebrows. The idea is to kind of make little marks that go in the same direction as the hair does in real life. So I've now got, the first thing I should do is build the base underneath the braids, where the hair is being pulled from the scalp and pulled towards the braids. I want to draw that stuff. I want to get the baby hairs and the little sort of texture that you see in and around and underneath the braids. I want to do all that stuff first, almost like I'm setting up a place where the braids can happen. And then the braids themselves, you know, we're going to have to make little segments. I know I didn't draw them out for this demo, but we're going to do little tiny pieces at a time. Now, it's not important that we get the exact same shape as each one, but you can see I'm kind of like doing almost like the letter C, and I'm sort of going over it again. Now, the part that is on the underneath side, and that is the light is coming from above, that part on the underneath side is going to be a little darker. On the top side, it'll be a little bit lighter. And just like I told you with a lot of the other hair, I wouldn't go out of my way to try to make these things too perfect in terms of size and space. You know, we don't want to kind of make them all exactly the same. We want some to have a few more marks, a few to have a little less. And as you see as I'm doing this, kind of creating these little segments for each braid. We don't want to make them too lined up and too perfect. I've got the bottom part now. And one on the top part. I'm gonna go on each one of them. Kind of make slightly more diagonal marks, just to kind of separate them on the top. And trust me, if you do this all the way through the length of it, people will understand when they look at it. Okay, I get it. Her hair is long and it is in braids. Again, I'm going to do the same sort of thing. These like little sort of like segments made of like almost the letter C. And this will be the bottom part of the braid, which is darker and heavier because the light is on the opposite side. Make some of them here as we start to go down the head just a little bit larger. You don't have to count them out and do exactly the same amount. And then on the top part, I will just come in at a different angle. So that I have a little texture and a little bit of shadow. And really, if you continue this all the way down, you'll have what looks like to be braids. And again, for any of these pictures, I would sort of just count out how many braids you're drawing and then just draw them almost just as like stripes to start with. And then again, the shading is really a little half moon letter C kind of shape. And then if you continue that all the way through, it will certainly give you a look of it. And the biggest thing I'd say with hair is have fun with it and try not to be too like careful with it. You got to do a lot of it, but adding that texture will really give the effect of soft fluff natural hair or tightly pulled braids. One more set of hair for today, I think. All right, we got some long hair. I kind of did something like this yesterday, except this is slightly lighter in color. So let me set up on a new spot here. We've got our 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. We've got this scalp and the cheek and the forehead, kind of going off in the thing, and then this would be really like the edge of the hair, and maybe to the top. And we've got some flyaways, and that's fine. All right, so I'll just, for the sake of drawing, just the eye is going to be something that's like down here. Okay. So for the sake of drawing the hair, lighter hair, longer hair, longer marks. I'm going to start over here where it's kind of like a little bit darker, and I'll fill in kind of close with my marks, but I'll make them nice and long, and I'm going to have them going in the same direction that the hair is flowing. And on this side, I'll kind of come through and fill in too. I'm going to leave a little bit more space between my marks. Here's an area where I want it to be kind of dark. here's an area where I want it to be a little bit lighter. To have it lighter, just more spaces in there. Now that goes for the top of the hair, which is even lighter. So for the top of the hair, I'll do even less marks, but they will be long, and they will kind of try to go in the same direction as the hair is flowing. Think about your pencil almost being like a comb, and it's just kind of following the direction of the hair. I got another little darker area in here. And the one thing I tell you is don't make all the lines exactly perfectly aligned with one another so each one of them goes in the same direction. But what you can see over here is that where the hair is darker in the picture, like right through here and here, I've made more marks and made it a little darker in my own. Where the hair is pretty light and almost white, I've really put a lot less marks. I still have the marks here flowing in the same direction as the hair. And if you can't figure out from the picture which way your hair should be going, look in real life. Look at what your hair is doing in real life. Now, to blend this, I'll just kind of drag my finger across it, long sweeping motions just to kind of blend it in. Remember when I was doing curlier hair, I make my marks a little curly. If I'm doing really short hair, I'm just kind of tapping my finger into it. In this case, I'm dragging my finger long through this to kind of blend it into the paper. And then I'm going to come back and add a few more darker marks. And I'm basing their placement on what I see in the picture. Okay. I'm going to add some little flyaways up there. And a few little marks like that. I'm going to add a few more back over here. Less marks where the hair is lighter, a little bit more where it happens to be darker. And then I'm going to use my eraser. I'm going to come in and I'm going to try to sort of erase some light white streaks. And when I do the eraser, I'm doing the same thing with the eraser as I did with the pencil. I'm going with the flow of the hair, long moves just like I did with the pencil point. But again, this time just kind of trying to erase some white. And to make some of that white stand out, I'm going to go ahead and put some dark marks right next to the white. And hopefully that kind of helps it kind of pop out a little bit more. And, you know, just to keep the edges natural, I'll do a few little flyaway marks and little hairs. I mean, the less perfect you make the hair, the better overall it will be. So that's my recommendation almost always. For no matter what kind of hair you do, you're going to do one full pass making your marks. You're going to blend it in, and then you'll come back over it and you'll add another layer of marks. Almost the same thing. So that goes for like short brushed hair that's a little bit longer, a crew cut, long dark flowing hair, light flowing hair. Difference here and here is that this is just a little bit darker overall gray than that is. If you have light hair, keep your marks light. But even within that light hair, there are dark parts and light parts, and I'm basing what I'm doing on what I see in the picture. Longer curly hair, shorter curly hair, bigger circles, smaller circles, braids. Start with what's underneath the braids first and how the hair is sort of moving towards those knots. And then those little segments one by one, you just do them. It's a lot of work, but it's a little less work than actually braiding the hair, I think. So you just got to just do one piece at a time. So that's a little bit more hair for today.